Why do half of all brave warriors end up in a place you've never heard of? You're bleeding out in the mud. The sounds of battle are fading. You're waiting for the Valkyries to drag you to Odin's golden hall, right? That's the dream. That's what every movie, video game, and TV show has told you is the ultimate goal. But then, a goddess arrives, points a finger right at you, and says, "Mine." And just like that, you realize Valhalla was never the only option. In fact, for the elite warriors, Valhalla might actually be the backup plan. You've been lied to about the Viking afterlife. We all have. We picture this monolithic heaven where every Viking with an axe goes to drink mead and fight forever. But the reality is way more complicated and, honestly, way more interesting. Because there isn't just one warrior paradise. There are two. And the one nobody talks about, it might actually be the better deal. You see, everyone knows Valhalla. It's the Hall of the Slain. It's loud, it's violent, it's iconic. But right next door, metaphorically speaking, is Folkvangr, the field of the host. And here is the kicker that usually gets left out of the history books. Odin doesn't own all the dead warriors. He has to share. And he doesn't even get the first choice. So, let's break down the biggest rivalry in Norse mythology that no one discusses. Valhalla versus Folkvangr. Who goes where? Why does it matter? And if you were a Viking in 900 AD, which ticket were you actually hoping to punch? Let's start with the one you know, Valhalla. In Old Norse, Valhöll, the Hall of the Fallen. It's located in Asgard, and it is massive. The myths say it has 540 doors, and out of each door, 800 warriors can march shoulder to shoulder. The roof is thatched with golden shields. The rafters are made of spears. It is essentially a fortress made of weapons. But think about what life is actually like there. We romanticize it as this eternal party. But strip away the glory for a second. The warriors there, the Einherjar, they wake up every single morning and gear up. They march out into the courtyard and they fight. They hack each other to pieces. They feel pain. They die. Again. And then, by evening, they are miraculously healed. They head back inside, drink mead, eat the meat of the beast Sarimnir, and then go to sleep. Then they wake up and do it all over again. That's not a paradise. That's a boot camp. That is an eternal, grinding, military training exercise. Why? Because Odin isn't running a retirement home. He's building an army. He knows Ragnarok is coming, the end of the world, and he needs bodies to throw at the wolf Fenrir and the giants. If you go to Valhalla, you aren't there to relax. You are fodder for the apocalypse. You are being preserved in a jar until the day the world burns. Now, contrast that with Folkvangr. This is the domain of Freyja. And this is where things get weird. Freyja isn't just the goddess of love and beauty. That's the watered-down version we get in pop culture. In the lore, she is a goddess of war. She rides a chariot pulled by cats, which sounds funny until you realize she's also the head of the Valkyries in some traditions. She is fierce. She is powerful. And according to the Grimnismal, a poem in the Poetic Edda, she gets to choose half of the dead warriors who fall in battle. And here is the crucial detail. She gets to choose first. The text says, the one half she chooses for herself, the other half Odin owns. That phrasing matters. Freyja gets the first pick of the draft. She walks the battlefield and points out the best, the bravest, the most noble, and takes them to Folkvangr. Odin, the All-Father, the king of the gods, he gets Freyja's leftovers. So, what is Folkvangr? The name means field of the people, or army field. Unlike the enclosed, shield-roofed fortress of Valhalla, Folkvangr is described as a meadow or a field. But within it, Freyja has her own great hall called Sessrumnir. The name means roomy seats or seat room. It sounds comfortable, doesn't it? Roomy seats. It implies space, gathering, maybe even conversation. While Valhalla is focused on the singular purpose of war preparation, Folkvangr seems to be more about the community of the dead. It's entirely possible that while Odin's boys are out back stabbing each other for practice, Freyja's chosen are actually enjoying an afterlife. This creates a massive contrast in the vibe of the two places. Odin is an Aesir god. He is obsessed with order, war, wisdom, and preventing his own death. His hall reflects that anxiety. It's rigid. It's a machine. Freyja is a Vanir goddess. The Vanir were older, wilder gods associated with nature, fertility, and magic. Her afterlife likely reflects that connection to the earth and the cycle of life, rather than just the finality of war. But here is the part that really messes with your head. We have to ask why Freyja gets the first pick. Why would Odin, the head honcho, agree to a deal where he loses the top 50% of the talent? There are a few theories, and they change how you look at Viking society completely. One theory is simply the diplomatic hostage situation. The Aesir and Vanir gods fought a huge war, and they traded hostages to keep the peace. Maybe giving Freyja the first pick of the dead was the price Odin paid to keep the Vanir happy. It's a political tax. But there's a darker theory. Maybe Odin doesn't want the noble heroes. Think about it. Odin needs killers. He needs berserkers. He needs guys who are so bloodthirsty they will fight a giant wolf while the sky is on fire. Maybe the best warriors, the honorable ones, the ones who fought to protect their families, the ones with pure hearts, aren't actually what Odin needs. Maybe he lets Freyja take the noble souls because they wouldn't be ruthless enough for the final battle. So, Valhalla becomes the house of the violent and the obsessed, while Folkvangr becomes the resting place of the honorable and the brave. Imagine being a Viking and knowing this. You're standing in the shield wall. You know that if you die, there's a coin toss. Heads, you go to the beautiful meadow with the goddess of magic. Tails, you go to the sweaty hall to get stabbed every day until the universe explodes. It changes the motivation, doesn't it? It adds a layer of uncertainty to the whole glory in death thing. And we haven't even touched on the women. There is a huge debate in historical circles about whether women could go to Valhalla. We know about shield maidens, but generally, Valhalla is a boys' club. Folkvangr, however, the myths are vague, but the name People Field and Freyja's nature suggest it might have been much more open. Some sources even suggest noble women who didn't die in battle might be welcomed by Freyja. It was a more inclusive, perhaps more human afterlife than the rigid military hierarchy of Odin. There is also a fascinating connection to the concept of returning. The Vikings believed in rebirth within the family line. They would name children after dead ancestors, hoping the soul would transfer. Folkvangr, being ruled by a fertility goddess, might have been a waiting room for reincarnation, a place you stay for a while before being spun back into the world of the living. Valhalla, on the other hand, is a dead end. Once you're there, you aren't coming back until Ragnarok, and when Ragnarok happens, you die for good. So, Folkvangr represents life and continuity. Valhalla represents finality and destruction. But hold on, because we need to address the elephant in the room. Why is Valhalla so famous if it's potentially the worse option? It's likely propaganda. The poets, the skalds who wrote these stories, who were they writing for? They were writing for kings and jarls, warlords, men who needed to convince young farmers to pick up a spear and go die in a foreign land. If you tell a farmer, "Hey, if you die, you might go to a nice meadow," he might say, "I have a nice meadow here, I'll stay home." But if you tell him, "If you die, you get to drink with the gods in a golden hall and be a hero," that sells. Valhalla is wartime propaganda. It's the shiny recruitment poster. Folkvangr is the reality they didn't need to advertise because it didn't serve the war machine. So, when we look back at the Viking Age, we shouldn't just see a monolithic culture obsessed with one outcome. We should see a people grappling with two very different ideas of death. One that embraces the cycle of nature and honor, and one that embraces the brutal necessity of war. It's funny, really. We spend so much time obsessing over Valhalla in our movies. We put it on t-shirts, we name gyms after it. But if you actually read the fine print of the contract, it's basically a horror movie where you get murdered every day for eternity. Meanwhile, Freyja is over in Folkvangr with the best warriors, plenty of space, and probably much better conversation, laughing at the guys who thought Odin's frat house was the peak of existence. So, knowing what you know now, if you were standing on that battlefield, holding your shield, looking up at the sky, which deity would you be praying to? Would you want the glory and the violence of the All-Father? Or would you hope, just maybe, that the Lady of the Vanir points her finger at you instead?